talking about bonding, and in this video, we're going to look more closely at covalent bonding and focus on the Lewis structures for covalent compounds. Now, you know you got this if you're able to identify the number of valence electrons an atom has, and then use that to draw covalent compounds sharing electrons to form bonds. So, as a reminder, covalent compounds are molecules made by atoms that covalently bond. And this means that the bonds are made by the sharing of electrons. This typically happens between two nonmetals. And the goal in a covalent compound is for every atom to get to 8 valence electrons. We call this the octet rule. There is an exception to the octet rule. Small atoms like hydrogen only need 2 electrons. So Lewis came up with this idea of thinking about the valence electrons of a single atom, and he extended his ideas to single atoms to how atoms bond. And so Lewis structures are a tool that show how the valence of electrons are shared between atoms to make bonds. And according to Lewis, he believed that nonmetals with unpaired electrons will make bonds. And most nonmetals want to have 8 valence electrons around them. So if I look at the Lewis diagram for an element, I can identify that this chlorine has 3 sets of paired electrons, meaning each, the top, the left, and the bottom, have 2 electrons, and 1 unpaired electron. So Lewis predicts that chlorine will form one covalent bond with another atom. Now, to do Lewis structures, you're going to need to remember that you can identify the number of valence electrons an atom has by looking at the periodic table. So if I want to predict the number of bonds an atom would form, I first have to find the atom on the periodic table. So let's take an example of carbon. Carbon is in group 4A, so it has 4 valence electrons. I'm going to look at what column it's in. It has 4 valence electrons, so I can draw the structure for that. And I'm going to put a dot on each side. The valence electrons want to be unpaired first, and then they pair up. So they'll unpair on all 4 sides, and that's all the electrons carbon has. So according to this Lewis diagram, carbon would need to make 4 bonds because it has 4 unpaired electrons. Let's look at another quick example. Here's sulfur. Sulfur has 6 valence electrons. Find it, look at column it's in, draw the Lewis structure. So with 6 valence electrons, we're going to get 2 paired sets and 2 unpaired electrons. So sulfur is looking to make 2 bonds.